Today on Locked On Rockies, swept away in the Bay, but the return of a big name for the Colorado Rockies, plus Germán Márquez signs an extension with the Colorado Rockies. What does it mean? And will he play all those last 2 years in purple?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 11th day of September in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You're in the right spot. That's what we do around here each and every day. Yes, even in the face of 100 losses, we still talk Colorado Rockies baseball right here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. You can also find us free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. You can bring us your Rockies hot takes and lots more when you check us out on YouTube, and you can post in the Locked On Rockies comment section there on your videos. Give us your hot takes and tell us what you're thinking about there. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the Germán Márquez extension. We're going to talk about the return of Kris Bryant, and we're going to talk about the Rockies being swept yet again. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Lowest prices guaranteed for those last-minute tickets. Hey, you can also check us out on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Don't miss us there. Locked On Rockies and Colorado Rockies in the search bar. If you're looking for your play-by-play action, it'll take care of you there. So I wanted to start the show with the big Rockies news. Well, Kris Bryant returning is, I would say, the other big Rockies news of today. We'll get to the game analysis and stuff at the end, just because what are we going to say? The Rockies got swept on the road again and fell short to their NL West rivals. I've done that podcast a few times. I want to talk about the signing and the re-signing of Germán Márquez. And I want to go excited, passionate Rockies fan, and then we got to bring some rationale, we got to bring some reason, we got to bring some hesitation alongside with that, and we'll do so here as we navigate the things here. First things first, Germán Márquez is going to have his chance to chase the Rockies record books and go down as the best pitcher in Rockies history, at least statistically. You might have other pitchers you might like, you might have other things, but Germán Márquez from the Rockies side is getting his chance to cement his Rockies legacy. As a Rockies fan, as a guy that really likes Germán Márquez and has really enjoyed watching him pitch, I like this. I enjoy this. I don't think it's an overcommitment. I think it's a good chunk of money, but it's not my money. And, invest in the good players that you like for a pitcher that you could potentially only be getting a season out of these 2 years with Germán Márquez, because here's what a very possible situation could be here for the Rockies. Germán Márquez returns in 2024. He's looking pretty good. And then he starts off strong in 2025, looking that he is. And the Rockies can move him if they're not looking at some sort of contention in 2025. I think the absolute earliest you can expect the Rockies to even be back remotely close to being entertaining the question of competitive is 2025. If Germán Márquez is returning to form while, but also, older, in the recovery, dealing with pitching at Coors Field, XYZ as he's coming back, that would put Germán at about 30 years old, because he's going to miss most of his 29-year-old season here with the recovery of Tommy John coming through this offseason and through next year. But we will see him pitch a little bit, but Germán Márquez will be 30 years old, most likely, or close to it, when we see him really return to consistent form for the Rockies. And as you're looking for, if he's able to capture some of his magic, if he's able to pitch like an all-star like he did, or close to it, or be someone that can get a team a solid 180 innings like he did in 2021. He also pitched last year, 2022, at 181 innings, 196 innings in 2018, 174. Obviously, the Tommy John completely changes that whole factor. The Rockies can allow Germán to cement his Rockies legacy, help the Rockies out, and then if they need to, they can move him to a competitor to help retool and restaff this organization. Because I don't think Germán Márquez signs another extension with the Colorado Rockies. I think this is a move where Germán can recover with a team that really believes in what he can do and his abilities. He's looking at his moment to be able to really cement and I've said it like 7 times. I know, I'm sorry, but he can place his name atop Rockies record leaderboards, which no matter what you want to say or the critiques you might have, it's tough to be successful at Coors Field. And more often than not, Germán Márquez has been successful at pitching for the Colorado Rockies. He's been a solid player for them and someone that has been able to put in some solid performance pitching, for the Rockies here now since 2016. He's got a career WAR of 17.7 according to Baseball Reference, 4.41 ERA in 173 starts. He's pitched over 1,000 innings. He's approaching 1,000 strikeouts and has got a career WHIP of 1.283. So he's certainly and above 500 win-loss record as well. So he has certainly shown that he is someone that can be very effective, someone that is going to be that can dominate on the bump. We just have to see what happens with the return and the recovery from Tommy John, and it's with the Rockies too. I mean, I can't sit here and say with the amount of injuries Rockies pitching have faced this year, mind you, not a single Rockies starter finished this year healthy. Austin Gomber's season likely over as well. And Kyle Freeland having a couple of stops on the IL. I think he did hit the IL a couple of times this year, at least missing some time with injuries on top of double Tommy John's throughout the organization. I'm a little hesitant. I mean, that's the health issues is something that is freak and is oftentimes out of the control of the organization and folks, but it's just something I'm keeping an eye on as we're looking for the Rockies to rehab and get Germán back. If Germán's velocity is down, if XYZ on top of a mixture of other concerns that we have for Germán Márquez, as we've seen a bit of a downtick in performance since the All-Star season, at least really a season of regression, and then of course the injury this year really derails it. When you're looking at his last full season, when you compare it to his All-Star season, home runs were up in 2022, runs allowed were up, hits allowed were up, strikeouts were down, walks were just about the same when all said and done. So there are concerns there. There are certainly issues that you have to be concerned of, and you have to monitor those as you look at Germán before getting injured, and in the small sample size you get from this year about some of those worrisome trends. However, I think he's still in a spot that there's Tommy John. Unfortunately, is a commonplace thing for teams to deal with. So I hope that there's enough resources, enough access to things that Germán's able to come back, and the adjustments that he undoubtedly is going to have to make, because you can't be the same exact pitcher that you were before you got a major injury like Tommy John. We'll see how that impacts him as well. But the thing I'm most excited about by this deal is it lets Germán take his chance at Rockies history. And I respect that, and I respect the Rockies going for that. And I respect that because if he does that, and he does so in a dominant or successful fashion, maybe not even all-star, but someone who's having a solid year, above positive wins above replacement and above average seasons and consistent performance for Germán, that's great. And it's not too much overcommitment, and it increases his value if you need to explore a trade if you're still in a position where your team's not competitive. And that allows Germán to go out and go to a team and help a team in a run as well. So there's things to be hesitant about with it. But I don't think this is an overcommitment by the Rockies. I don't think this is too much money by the Rockies, especially if they're willing to pay this type of stuff to someone like Germán. It's okay. But we can't sit here and think that this is going to solve all of the problems and solve all of the issues. And we can't sit here and expect Germán to immediately come back and be the same guy. Hopefully, we're going to see him come back and be a retooled version of himself. But that question mark, it's just such a big injury to have to return from, and there's just so many question marks that surround it. This might end up just being Germán going after his chance to be a Rockies legend, other than a big name in Major League Baseball. But this is I do think that after the 2 years, both sides will be looking at this in a completely different way, especially at the way this season ended for the Rockies and for Germán, and going forward, especially with if Germán had a full season this year, I would be curious to see what differences it would make. But the Rockies believe in their guy as he recovers from his recovers from his injury. I like it. I am not. I don't shy away from the fact that there are things to be concerned about. But all in all, I think this is a good move for Rockies fans, and I think Germán Márquez gives the Rockies chances to win ball games, and he's a solid starter. Again, just like with everyone, or just like when we talked about a couple of the other Rockies pitchers, no one on this staff is an ace or a 1 or a 2 on other staffs. Maybe Germán Márquez sneaks into a 2 spot on some teams. But if you got solid middle of rotation guys, that's great pitcher depth, and that helps you. We just can't sit here and fully rely on Germán Márquez to be his all-star self right away, and just fully rely on Germán Márquez like we have in the past. The Rockies pitching staff will not be saved by just Germán Márquez. And we'll see how the Rockies address that starting pitching depth and more as they look to the offseason. And Bud Black made some, it wasn't really much of a comment, wasn't really anything, but at least open the door for some speculation. Let's talk about that, and let's talk about Kris Bryant returning to the lineup here coming up in segment number 2. But before we do that, got to tell you about our friends at Gametime. And Gametime got me to the All-Star game this year, and they can get you to your next event. If you haven't planned ahead and bought tickets, well, Gametime's got you covered, because buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With all sorts of deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. And the best part, when you're booking and looking at your tickets on Gametime, you can see the images of the seats, where you're going to sit ahead of time, so you know not only are you getting a great deal, but a great seat. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. We're also on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app, alongside your Colorado Rockies play-by-play coverage. And you can find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Go subscribe there, help the show out. It's the best way to help the show. And thank you so much, folks, as we have been going through the moving and the grooving here of the season. So we will talk about the series, I guess, a little bit of the series. We'll talk a little bit about the series here from this weekend. Don't want to spend too much time on it, to be totally honest. I'll focus instead on the other big Rockies news that happened today. Kris Bryant returning to play his former team and get back on the field for the Colorado Rockies. In a corresponding move, Cole Tucker has been designated for assignment. And I got to share the sentiments of Evan Lang over here on Twitter, who is sharing the Rockies just mishandling of some of these guys they're not really even giving close to a fair shake to, while committing to a player and players this year that have underperformed massively and deserve the DFA. Evan Lang here from @Evan_Lang here, 27. The Rockies called up Coco Montez. He didn't play at all. Then Montez was DFA'd for Cole Tucker. Tucker had just 2 plate appearances. Now Tucker has been DFA'd for Kris Bryant. What was the point of all this? And it's a great question. Why are you continuing to have Harold Castro play on your team at a negative 1.4 WAR and 251 at bats this year, a 255 batting average, driving in 30, a 270 OBP, a slugging of 319, an OPS of 589, and an OPS plus of 53. A player that really hasn't done a whole lot in his career. A player that has had opportunities and chances this season to make impacts and hasn't always done it. I'd rather see Cole Tucker. I'd rather see Coco Montez. I'd rather see some people we haven't seen a lot this year, because why the heck not? Why are we continuing to stick with Harold Castro for depth or for this, when at this point you can put just about anybody? You can just try just about any of these players as utility players, because why the heck not? These players getting called up and getting no opportunities and getting called up and getting one game, it never has made sense for the way the Rockies have approached these young guys. There has never been a season more equipped and more easy for the Rockies to plug in some of these guys and see what happens. Are Cole Tucker and Coco Montez going to be the next big things? We don't know. We simply don't know, because we didn't get to see him at all. We've seen 250 at-bats of Harold Castro. How many more at-bats and how many more appearances from Harold Castro do you need to see that he's performing at the bottom level of performance of Major League Baseball players? I just think that this is something that has been really frustrating. I mean, guys that don't get their chances, don't get their shake in a season where it should be nothing but guys getting their chance, getting their opportunity. And now, with the return of Kris Bryant, the conversation gets further complicated. What do you do? We've already seen Tolia get demoted for more consistent playing time. That was kind of to be expected, especially with the way that Hunter Goodman's been playing. But now what? Who gets the short end here? Is it Kris Bryant trying to be careful with the health and he's only playing so much? But then it's Kris Bryant and he's not playing and he's not getting any appearances and he's not building up any, he's not really having any more of an impact than he was if he was still on the IL. Is it Montero, the guy that you've been batting in the 4 spot, the guy that you've been seeing a little bit more from, the guy that might be benefiting from the consistent playing time, or at least is showing signs that consistent playing time is helpful for him? The Rockies might have gotten swept, but Montero had a hit in every single one of those games, and it got on base at least twice in that entire series over the weekend, with a walk in the game number 2 there. He's got a career high 17 game on base streak. Do you really want to disrupt what you're doing with Montero, a critically important piece to your foundation? Or at least as we're supposed to believe and as we're supposed to follow from the trade? And do you want to get in the way of Hunter Goodman, who is setting, who is getting off to as good a start and as good of a production as Trevor Story and Troy Tulowitzki? 286 average and 42 at-bats, 12 RBI already, a stolen base, OPS of 826, an OBP of 326. This Kris Bryant situation, we're going to see it. What we're going to see now is how the Rockies figure out and navigate the Kris Bryant scenario and situation. Because it just becomes a bigger and bigger elephant in the room. He's going to play first base now. Okay? So it's a rotation, and where's Charlie Blackmon playing? Is Charlie Blackmon playing right field, or is he DHing? Because that's going to limit where you can put Montero or Bryant or Goodman or Nolan Jones. But Nolan Jones is probably going to be playing the outfield and playing out there for as long as possible. And especially as we continue to wait for Brenton Doyle. I believe, 3 straight games sat. I don't know if we'll see him tonight here in the game, but Nolan Jones probably ain't coming off the field anytime soon. So this is going to be interesting. The biggest impact, I think, of Kris Bryant returning to the club isn't his on-the-field performance. It's how the Rockies set and build their lineups for the final month of the season. What's more important for the Colorado Rockies in 2023? Is it more important to get Kris Bryant at bats and get Kris Bryant in as many games as possible in the final months of a lost season? Or is it more important to let young guys get the time? I stand by what I said. Even if he is healthy, I still personally don't think that Kris Bryant should have come back this year. I know he's a competitor. I know he's the big, he's a big name. And obviously this is just kind of maybe label it into the hot takes. But come back fully healthy to play 150 games next year. That's what I want from Kris Bryant. Now, I have Kris Bryant coming back and possibly disrupting good stretches amidst losses, yes, but good stretches for players that are at critical points in their kind of what they're going to control, their establishment of their abilities and their contributions to the Rockies. Because sure, it'll be nice. It'll be cool to see Kris Bryant play. Absolutely. I mean, he's a big name, but there's nothing he's done in a Rockies uniform to get me out of my seats and think that prioritizing Kris Bryant over everything isn't the right move for the Rockies. And that contract and the commitment and everything else is going to come. We got Kris Bryant playing his third position. Well, he can play outfield. Well, that's too much for left and center. We'll just have him play right. Well, that's a bit too much. We're going to have him play first. The Rockies don't have a plan for Kris Bryant. And now they don't have a plan for this other talent. It doesn't seem... I'm curious to see what the plan is with Kris Bryant and the current state of the Rockies and this current team as it's built right now. Will it change in the winter? We'll see. I don't know. Bud Black mentioned just slightly. It really wasn't much. It was basically just like, we'll see who gets added in terms of offseason acquisitions. I mean, the only thing I'm taking away from that is hopefully it sounds like the Rockies are going to be encouraged to be going out and going to sign people. The best way you can address some of these things, I think with the pitching especially, is you're going to have to open up the wallet a little bit and be willing to take the risk to spend some money to bring pitchers into Colorado. I know the super bullpen blew up and it didn't work, but what's working right, or what's going on right now ain't working, and you're hoping that some of these relievers are actually going to be better or in better spots next year if you can build a starting rotation that isn't incredibly dependent on them. Because even with re-signing Germán and everything, I mean, your starting pitching depth is still in huge jeopardy for next year. For most of the season, the Rockies are still down 2 starters. They're still trying to figure out what's going on with some of the arms within the organization, and they still have people that are facing challenges getting back. So the Rockies have to be active in the offseason if they think that they're going to be competitive in 2024. That's the big question. I don't necessarily think they will be, though. We'll see. But Kris Bryant returns, plays the Cubs. That's always fun. That's always cool. We'll see how that works out. And we'll at least we got to mention the series that happened this weekend. So I've avoided it all this episode, so let's talk about it now coming up here in segment number 3. But before we do that, if you're confident in Kris Bryant, you're confident in the Rockies, maybe you're confident in the Cubs, and you want to put your fantasy baseball expertise to the test, your ability to predict stats and everything at Sleeper. And the MLB playoffs are around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now with studs like Acuna, Betts, and Ohtani, and the return of Kris Bryant. Pick more or less, yeah, that's it, more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for 100 times payout on Sleeper. So if you think Charlie Blackmon and Kris Bryant are going to get over a hit and a half, you can go fill out a form and check it out on Sleeper. And you can see the little slip right here on the YouTube screen to see what it looks like there. And the folks at Sleeper are trying to give you 100 times a bonus on your money. When you use the promo code LOCKEDON at Sleeper, you're going to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. That's right. All you got to do, head to Sleeper. You can check out the app and you can see what's going on with Sleeper. and you use that promo code Locked On, you're going to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Check it out there, sleeper.com, and don't miss out on that promo code Locked On for that 100 times bonus. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find your team every day. We are also on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. We are also on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. You can check us out there. Okay, the Rockies swept by the Giants over the weekend, and it was a bummer. The Rockies simply couldn't avoid the long ball. 8 home runs hit by the Giants in that series, and Rockies had a chance in that first game there too, especially jumping out to that early lead. The offense was able to bounce back, kind of keep them going. But what have we been saying for a while? The pitching continues to be a massive issue for the Colorado Rockies. But hey, it was really cool to hear Nolan Jones get mic'd up in center field. It was really cool to see the national broadcast focus on Nolan Jones. Again, Nolan Jones has been impactful this season for the Rockies. Currently, his year looking at this. 280 batting average with 48 RBI, 13 stolen bases, an OBP of 361, a slugging of 517, an OPS of 878 with an OPS plus of 125, 15 home runs in that time, and he's almost gotten 300 at-bats this year. And remember, he wasn't always getting consistent playing time with the Rockies. He has been really, really improving, and someone is exciting to watch. So really fun to hear him and get his insights there from the on-field interviews. Still not sure how I feel about those, but it was cool. It's a cool insight just because it still seems very distracting. But hey, you know what? If you can have fun with it, if you can keep the right mindset, it was a cool insight to the game. But pretty tough for him to be dealing with horrible sun conditions there in center field, and also doing an interview at the same time. So, but Nolan Jones still looking great, still looking promising, still being someone that is going to get a couple of more nods here, I think, from the big wigs of the MLB as we get closer to award voting time. But I think the Rockies are going to fall short on any sort of recognition lists there. The Rockies return home to face the Cubs, and then the Giants are back in town. So two teams that are right in the thick of the playoff race. The Rockies are continuing a stretch of ball against playoff opponents. They have now been playing playoff-style opponents since the White Sox series, and they have been doing mostly that in the second half, and will be playing against hopeful playoff teams here the rest of the way. So we'll see how the young Rockies respond. We'll see how Kris Bryant handles the Chicago Cubs. And the Rockies are going up against a couple of people making their we got a debut going on for the Rockies, and rookie pitcher Jordan Wicks is going up against the Rockies here, and Wicks is currently 3-0 with a 2.16 ERA. So promising start for his career. All right, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. We thank you for making us your first listen of the day. You can check us out on your favorite streaming services. Check us out on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. And folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.